for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate Mr. Pinschmidt being with us today. I'll go back to something that Chairman McHenry mentioned, and that was following the FSOC's July 31st meeting. The Council announced that it would take a more focused analysis of industry-wide products and activities, and in the asset management industry, they would do this way rather than designating specific asset managers as systemically risky. So it's my understanding there's been a working group set up, or maybe about to be set up, to look at these products and activities. I've got maybe 5 questions here that I would just ask you, and then you could give me your response. But if you want to list these as I go through them, the first would be, can you tell us the makeup of that working group, the timeline for review, will there be a report put out for public comment at the conclusion, does the OFR have a role in the process, I would ask, and will there be additional roundtables where all stakeholders can participate?
So, Congressman, you're right. Following the July 31st meeting, the readout for that meeting noted that the Council asked staff to undertake a detailed review of asset management activities and products. The Council has long recognized that asset managers are different than perhaps other non-banks, and that was part of the reason in the 2012 final rule on the designations authority that the Council noted that additional work needed to be done, and that was the impetus for the OFR study, which identified certain activities. So to the extent that work is being done there, you know, clearly when you look at asset managers and you compare them to other non-banks, even the largest asset managers, their balance sheets are substantially smaller than other non-bank firms. There's very little leverage. There's a agency business model which is quite distinct from a balance sheet business model. So to the extent that a company was in distress, they're not necessarily selling their own assets. The customers are kind of, it's their decision. So
right.
These are different, oh, sorry.
But the makeup of the working group and the timeline for review, if you could give me some information on that.
In terms of you know, the process going forward, I mean,
right.
that's a decision that's being worked out at the Council level, and
that decision hasn't been made yet. Will there be a conclusion put out for public comment, do you think?
To the extent, you know, the Council recognizes the importance of engaging with the public on its work, and that was part of the reason the Council hosted a asset management conference back in May. So we would expect, to the extent that, you know, this work moves forward, additional sort of consultation and collaboration.
Maybe a public comment session at the end then would be appropriate.
Okay.
You're anticipating. Does the OFR have a role in the process?
Certainly, all the member agencies of the Council will be involved.
Okay.
I mean,
have the FSOC participants agreed that they will not meet with entities under consideration until an actual Stage 3 designation is made, or do you know what's going on that front?
So, Congressman, in terms of the non-banks designations process, what I would note is, you know, we did put out the final rule that was subject to 3 rounds of comment. We recognize that was done, you know, 2 years ago now, and we've gone through a process with 3 different companies for designation. They're clearly new facts on the ground. The Council doesn't want to be frozen in its ways and in its process. So as I noted in my oral remarks, you know, certainly the Council recognizes we've received a lot of input. We've gone through the process a few times, and we're evaluating.
Let me ask you this question. Is this policy formalized or documented? Or are you putting down a documented process here?
So yeah, in terms of the interpretive guidance that accompanies the final rule, it notes the interaction between the Council and this is also supplemented in the hearing procedures for the designations process. It notes the interaction between the Council and companies under consideration.
Well, we've talked about transparency and due process, you know, during this hearing. And I think a simple solution here would be publishing what the process actually is regarding interaction with companies in stage 2, or purgatory, I think, as our colleague rightly termed it. And that might be your best way forward, if I might suggest. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes himself for 5 minutes. Mr. Pinschmidt, you know, I listened to your opening statement, and I was taken with your commitment and support for openness